let's talk about how to actually give your talk. Have you ever seen anyone give a presentation and they look down and they sort of maybe they shuffle back and forth, or maybe they looked around, or maybe they had a pen in their hands and they clicked it lots of times, or maybe they shuffled, or maybe they paced wildly back and forth? These are actually very common habits that people have. Now, nobody plans to do those things. Nobody thinks, I know what will be the best way to give a presentation is to look at my feet and shuffle around. What's happened is they haven't actually given any thought to the physical act of standing up and presenting. And in the absence of a plan, what has happened is bad habits have crept in. So let's talk about 5 tips that will make you ready to be present physically when you give your presentation. Number 1, think of your face first. When people look at you, the very first thing they see is your face. When you come out, get to where you're going to present, plant yourself, breathe out ever so slightly, and smile. Everyone smiles when they give a gift. As a result, we all associate smiles with something meaningful in some way, shape, or form. Unless you are giving very dire information, failure to smile can look like you don't care, can look like the information isn't important. So what you want to do, look at your audience, breathe out ever so slightly, and smile. Now next, think about your eyes, making eye contact. If you're giving a large presentation to a large room, talking to everybody, you can't talk to everyone at once. Think about the way you talk to individuals. What you want to do is you want to make eye contact with one person in the audience, and you want to give them 1 or 2 points. Then you want to move to another point of the audience, make eye contact with an individual, and give them 2 or 3 points. Now, over the course of your presentation, you want to talk to people on the left, you want to talk to people on the right, you want to talk to people in front of you, and you want to talk to people behind you. Now, for beginning presenters, the best thing to do is to focus on people at the back of the room, because what that will do is it will lift your face and make sure that your voice comes out. Look towards the back, but also make individual contact with people around the room. So number 1, face first. Make eye contact, smile slightly, and talk to individuals. Second thing, pay attention to your feet. Where do your feet go? You can often tell where somebody is thinking about or what somebody wants to do based on where their feet point. If they're pointing away from you, you think, oh, they're trying to get away. Some people will do this, some people will rock, some people will move around slightly. This is because their feet aren't in a position that will help them. The best place to give a presentation is with your feet about shoulder width apart, with your weight over your feet, ever so slightly forward. This is a formal stance. You want to keep your knees slightly bent so that you don't lose your blood flow. But this is a formal presentation. My feet is equally weighted on both feet. I can, for an informal presentation, put my weight on one foot, but what I want to avoid doing is rocking with this foot. I can give a formal presentation, I can give an informal presentation. What I want to avoid doing is rocking rhythmically back and forth between these things. Just think about where you put your feet. Now, the other thing is, some people get so nervous when they're giving a presentation that they try to make themselves as small as possible. So they'll cross their feet and stand like this. Or sometimes they'll want to hide behind something, so they'll stand as far back from the audience as they can, but keep one foot up. And sometimes they also add to that kind of a little rocking of their foot. And if you add all of them together, you get something that sort of looks like this as people are talking. And they're shuffling back and forth. What they haven't done is given any thought to simply standing their ground and making sure they talk to their audience. So first, pay attention to your face. Second, pay attention to your feet. Make sure that they're pointed in the direction you want them to be pointed. The next, you want to think about your torso. How open or closed is your torso? Now, you've probably heard you're not supposed to cross your arms when you're giving a presentation, and that may or may not be true. You can probably get away with it, but what it does is it closes off part of your body. But I can do that same closing by rolling in my shoulders or by slumping or trying to make myself smaller. What this is doing is it's closing off, it's hiding the vulnerable bits of my body. Better for a presentation to give yourself more expression is to let your shoulders open, to let them come back, to let your body be present. This open posture for your torso is a much better way to be available to your audience and to make that connection. Next, what do you do with your hands? Now, this is one of my very favorite presentation questions. People ask me all the time, what do I do with my hands? Which is a hysterical question because you've never been talking to another human being and in the middle of that conversation gone, wow, look at my hands. They're so far away from my body. You've never had this conversation. But when you stand up and talk in front of people, you begin to feel a little unnatural. And because of that, you notice that your hands are very far away. And you know that they have something to do with your expressiveness. So you think, I have to do something with them. And once you begin thinking about it, your movements often become inauthentic. So the simplest thing to do is, one, keep your hands attached to your arms. That's the number one thing. Number two, gesture like you normally do. Some people talk with their hands a lot. Go ahead and talk with your hands a lot. Some people don't talk with their hands a lot. Don't try to become a hand talker if you're not a hand talker. But no one talks with their hands just dead at their side either. There's some middle ground here. What you want to do, as a general rule, is just keep your hands more or less in front of your body so that they can be available. Some people will advocate that you hold them behind your back like in a military posture, but what this does is it locks them in a position. The same thing is true if you put them in your pockets. There's nothing wrong with sticking your hands in your pockets, but it locks them in one position. You don't want them to be locked into one position. You want them to be in a place where they can move. Now, one of the best rules of thumb is to think about your presentation as existing in space around you. So some ideas exist on your left, some ideas exist on your right, some of them are behind you, some of them are in you, and some of them are for your audience. Don't gesture in this way, on the one hand, on the other hand, but you want to think about those ideas as existing one place or another, internal or external. And what that will do is it will let your hands have a place to go. Minor gestures, they're called micro gestures, so it's not a gesture so much as it is an inclination in space. So don't think about gestures, but do think about letting your hands have free rein to do with what they will. The last thing you want to think about is movement. Now, what presenters who are not prepared will do is they will rock or maybe they will pace in order to have some energy. They feel all this energy, and so they have to do something, and they just pace, sort of randomly back and forth. You don't want to pace, but you do want to allow yourself the freedom to move. Right now, I'm on camera, and I'm trying to maintain a certain distance from the lens. But if there's an audience in front of me, and there's somebody over here, as I make eye contact with them, I may move to this side of the room to be able to talk to that person. Or if I have a different point, I may see somebody else over there, and I may move to them in order to make that connection. Think of movement as transporting your body in space, and do it deliberately. If you do it in a random way, it will come across as pacing. What you want to do for the most part is think, this is where I want to be for this part of my talk, this is where I want to be for the next part of my talk, and here's where I want to end my talk. So again, 5 tips that'll help you be alive in your body. Face first. Smile, make eye contact with individuals. Second, think about your feet. Where are your feet pointing and where are you going to stand? Symmetrically, asymmetrically. 3, torso. Are you going to be closed or open? I'm going to recommend open is probably a little bit better. 4, what do you do with your hands? Keep them attached to your arms, number 1, and put your talk in space so that it lives outside of your body. Lastly, think about your movement as transportation of your body. Go from one side of the audience to the other side of the audience, close the distance and enlarge the distance, depending on what you want your audience to feel. You do those things, you're going to be fine.